Welcome to the Kianistan podcast. I really hope you guys are enjoying these interviews as much as I am. Once again, can I please request, do leave any comments, provide us with your feedback. I love to hear your thoughts, negative or positive, whether you want to talk about the topics we've covered, or you want to talk about, or you want to tell us what you want to hear in the future, or just to say hello. Drop us a line. It'd be great to get to know you a bit better so that we can make sure that we can deliver the quality and standard that you expect and deserve from us. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Mahfuz Talukder, aka News Baba. If you have not seen Mahfuz's videos already, we'll leave a link. He's very big on TikTok, and I think relatively recently he's come on YouTube and taken YouTube by storm. Since personally, I listen to Mahfuz every day now. He's like in part of my my daily feed. Actually, I listen to him like 2 or 3 times. I don't know how many videos, Mahfuz, you can bring out on a daily basis. But anyway, Assalamu alaikum, Mahfuz. Thank you for joining us.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. It's a pleasure to be here, Tafim. Thank you for inviting me. And the answer is probably between 3 and 7.
Really? How do you do that, Mahfuz?
A lot of hard work and a very patient wife.
Both of those things very important. Mahfuz, what I like about your videos, they're really well researched. So I can see that you're kind of putting in a lot of effort and doing, you know what you're talking about, but you're able to deliver that with a lot of wit and humor. And I think that's something that's really needed, because these things can get very stressful and we can kind of get really depressed by a lot of stuff that's going on. So I think for me personally, I think the way you deliver and what you deliver is really refreshing to see.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I made a very conscious decision not to chase virality or sensation or be alarmist to just get views. That wasn't and still isn't the point of what I do online. What I do online is to help people understand geopolitics, which is, I describe it in one sentence as the science of how nation states think. Just understanding that. And you can't understand that from a reliable source. If your source is right one day, wrong the other day, if you go on X Twitter, there's loads of geopolitics accounts. Sometimes they're posting right things. Sometimes they're posting things you can't verify except for that one X Twitter post that's talking about it. In which case it leads to confusion. And I don't think that actually helps. It harms, because people then sort of detach or abandon it, or they fall for it. And, they start talking about, there's a Stargate in Iran that the US is going to ground, invade, and walk through so that they appear on another planet. Like, it's just, you just lose sight of reality. And especially now with AI in the media as well, in the space, I wanted to make sure that I'm talking about things that are verifiable. My go-to technique is basically look at the mainstream media outlets. They have a very high bar. Obviously, they have regulatory guidelines they have to follow. If they break them, they're going to get, punished, or they're going to get their licenses revoked from governments. So I basically consume a lot of mainstream media, process it, remove the spin, the Western spin, and then deliver it. And I call it the news and analysis, unbiased and without that Western spin.
Exactly. That is your strapline. So Mahfuz, so let's talk about what's happening in Iran. To start with, I wanted to get your thoughts on why is it that America doesn't seem to have like a coherent story or like a narrative to fit with whatever they're doing. Personally, I think the reason for that is because this war isn't America's war. This is like Israel's war that America's been kind of pushed into waging. Israel has a strategy. They have a narrative for themselves, but that's not one that sells in America very well these days. And because of that, it feels like Trump and his team, they're saying one thing one day, another thing another day. How do you see what they're doing from an American point of view?
How do I see what they're doing from an American point of view? I'm not American, so
What is their strategy? What is the ambition and what's the goals?
So yeah, it's a good question. So part of understanding geopolitics is I make a point to tell people to be analytical you can take sides. People have sides, obviously. People naturally gravitate towards one side or another in pretty much everything, especially if they know more and more about a thing. But when you're being analytical, if you try to look at the situation from a bird's eye view where both sides are sort of standing on either side, you're just in the middle looking, I think that helps a lot. Now, if we take a analytical view of the situation now, the US doesn't look like it's got a clear set or even one war goal, a war objective for their war on Iran. And you are correct, by my assessment at least, is because it's not their war. It is Israel who has to act now. I remember I was talking about this last year, right, in some of my videos. I said after the first Israel-Iran conflict in 2025, back in June, the 12-day war, as it's now called, after that was, the ceasefire was signed essentially, Israel's window of opportunity for bringing America into a conflict and switching up, changing the reality in the Middle East region in a way that benefits the Israeli geopolitical objectives, the window's closing. They really need to get a move on. Why is it closing? Because zoom out further to planet Earth and you see that we have moved from the age of unipolarity under America into an age of bipolarity or multipolarity, where America is one titan, one great power, as I call it, and China is another titan, another great power. And the term great power, I borrowed from historically the Victorian era, when the great powers of Europe basically ruled the world pretty much solo. America was just starting off back then, and Europe had industrialized first. Everyone else in the world sort of got caught off guard, like these guys are showing up with like things that we can't really compete with. And there was a scramble for Africa and a scramble for East Asia and a scramble for the Indian subcontinent, in Latin America. So now the world has two great powers. It is almost analytically speaking inevitable, by my assessment and the assessment of people far superior to myself, professionals and academics, it is the assessment of many, that America will have to more and more focus in on China specifically, because China is the rival. Look at GDP, look at economic activity, look at military development, look at science and technology developments. It is just these two that are the center of gravity for planet Earth now, these two nations, which means that Israel has a very small amount of time. The era of unipolarity is dying or has gone already. Some people say it's gone. Some people say we're still in it. It's not an on-off switch. Obviously, it's black. It's not black and white. It's a sort of gray fading in and out. So in the second age I mentioned, multipolarity, I call it, I like to put nice names on things. I call it the age of the eagle and the dragon. In this age, America cannot afford any longer. When it was sole hegemon, it can afford to be everywhere all the time, and it can't afford that now. So it's pulling out of Europe. I said that last year, and you saw more and more that happening this year. He started talking about nabbing Greenland and Canada. You should be one of my states, and Mexico, you're looking a bit sus. All kinds of very alarming moves and comments. You're seeing America also pull out of the Middle East. So Israel being, I call in my videos, America's sugar baby, but let's say Israel being America's friend and ally in the region. They have very little time left, by their assessment, one could argue, where America's going to be there to be called upon. So we must call upon them now. We must grab America as our baton. We must whack Iran with it, hopefully hard enough. It doesn't matter if the baton gets hurt. It doesn't matter if American soldiers lose their lives. I'm willing to pay that price as a Israeli state. I'm willing to fight Iran to the last American available. And the mission is to break Iran, which is the last bastion of open opposition to Israeli dominance in the Middle East region. The Middle East has 5 regional powers. They are Israel. Then in the middle, you have Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Turkey in terms of in escalating independence. And then you have Iran on the far side. Iran is the only true bastion of opposition. The other 3 are within America's sphere of influence to some degree, though they also are sliding out as America slides out of the region. But this is the last opportunity Israel has to break up Iran or to install a puppet administration in Iran so that Israel's geopolitical objectives, should it be the case that their geopolitical objectives are to expand and ensure their own security. They can't do that if Iran's still alive and America's gone. They can't fight Iran alone. So that's what you're seeing now. You're seeing the Israeli war on Iran. Netanyahu kept flying to America, poking daddy. Daddy, please help me with this. Daddy, I want this guy gone. Reminded me of Veruca Salt from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. She said she wanted a golden ticket. Her father made sure all the chocolates were opened until they got a golden ticket for her. And Veruca Salt, i.e. Israel, was given the golden ticket, which is Big Daddy America comes to your aid. Okay, fine. I'll help you. I'll go all in. That's what America said this year. Last year, they said, I'll give you 1 day, okay? I brought in the B-2 bombers. I used the massive ordnance penetrators, the MOPs, to bunker bust Natanz and Fordow and Isfahan. Now I'm gone, okay? I can't do anything more for you. So Israel, seeing that that's what America's going to do, they scrambled to sign a ceasefire, and they did. This time, America said, okay, I'm going all in for you because you kept nagging me. Maybe there's some other leverage there. AIPAC has thrown the kitchen sink at American politics because AIPAC is a diminishing center of influence in American politics. They're on their way out. For the first time in American history, to be a person running for U.S. Congress, to be a person who's a senator, to have, I am representative, subheading, AIPAC, my opinion on AIPAC is this. To be supported by AIPAC is actually now a black mark.
Yeah.
That's the complete opposite of what was the case before the crisis, as many would describe it, including experts. The genocide in Gaza flipped it completely. So now AIPAC's diminishing their influence. So they threw everything in terms of their influence, the pro-Israel lobby, to get Trump to join Israel in this conflict. And that's where we are now. That's why America's so confused. That's why there's articles across mainstream media talking about how American and Israeli interests are diverging. Americans don't benefit geopolitically from being in the Middle East, especially don't benefit from being bogged down in Iran, a ground invasion. American citizens, both sides, Republicans and Democrats, will be like, you having a laugh, you crazy. China's sitting there slurping noodles, laughing. Putin is sitting there with Xi Jinping, laughing, eating, I don't know, a frozen fish. It's crazy what's going on.
Yeah.
And this is the reality. And that's why the US has no clear objectives, because really they can't say we have no objectives because it's his war.
Yeah, it's true. But also, we're now today at day 12 of this current war that's going on. Which is exactly how many days the previous one lasted. And now already we see that Trump is kind of getting ready to tap out. But I think that he's going to find that starting a war is easy. Ending a war can take a long, long time, as we're seeing in Ukraine.
I disagree a bit, but carry on, please. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, sure. And that's what I'm thinking. I think Iran and Israel are likely to go on a bit more, especially Iran, simply because every time Iran stops, it just gives an opportunity for Israel and America to regroup and then start the war all over again. Because of that, Iran kind of wants some actual a proper settlement. But America, Trump, they were always looking for a short kind of a in and out war.
That's right.
They're in now, but do you really think that they can leave Israel behind to fend for themselves?
This is the $1 million or probably $1 million question, oil barrel, $1 trillion question. You can get in, can you leave? It's like one of those, traps where you put your hand in and you can't put it out again because it's crazy. There's some mad contraptions in the world, obviously. So this is why I said it might not be that difficult for America to leave compared to a conventional war. I'll tell you why. Because it's an air campaign. You can just stop flying over Tehran.
Yeah.
You can just stop flying over Iran. Practically speaking, you're out. You're out now. But obviously, the diplomacy is the problem. Because America has their face saving to do, and America has negotiations with Iran to do. So imagine trying to bring the new supreme leader, come and sit down at the table, let's talk. And he's like, you just killed my Baba. Are you kidding? Bruv, Reza, bring more missiles. Like, it's very unlikely that the Americans are going to be able to easily bring Iran to the table without escalating further, threatening more damage. By my assessment, the Iranians might still come to the table because emotional you can get and a lot of damage they have inflicted. But at the end of the day, the Iranian state has to think geopolitically, cold, hard geopolitics. Yeah. And in that regard, they might think, we can't last. We can't last. This is not the most economically sustainable strategy. We have shown the world that we have a knife and it is at the throat of the world's economy. But if America looks like they are willing to now sue for peace, basically, and Iran says no to the last, we're just completely going YOLO, you only live once, then the world, the nations of the world will kind of turn on Iran. Right now, the anger by the nations of the world are towards America. It's like, why the flip did you start this if you can't finish it properly? Like, what? Bro, my wallet is empty. Every country is saying that. And they're blaming America because they started a quote-unquote war of choice, i.e. they were not in imminent danger, but they started it anyway as a misadventure, as the Iranians are stating it. But that sentiment might shift towards blaming Iran if it's seen that America is willing to stop now, but Iran's like, I don't want to talk, I want to keep striking your military bases in the Gulf monarchies. So Iran does have to be quite practical, and that might actually benefit America in that they might actually be able to extricate themselves. I personally gave my assessment that there's a 50-50 chance that America might just drop Israel like it's hot and head for the door, like, peace out, okay, this looks a bit peaked now, I'm going to leave. And Israel's like, Daddy, where you running? And America's like, America first, YOLO, I'll see you later, America first. So if that happens, yeah, the situation's really bad for Israel because then Iran is in a very strong commanding position in the sense that they have shown diplomatically that they can look America in the eyes. I said in one of my analogies, I said, America's like a year 10 kid. Iran is like a year 6 kid, but he's a bit of a fiery year 6 kid, right? And America's come over and he's like, give me your packed lunch, boy. And year 6 kid spits in his face. And he says, I have every right to a civilian nuclear packed lunch program. And America says, absolutely not. And sort of starts beating the kid up. The year 6 kid has shown, I can stand my ground. And the year 10 kids left, you could say, to some extent. If America leaves, then Israel's in a tough position because they're soloing Iran. They couldn't deal with Iran with America's support. How are they going to solo Iran? And also, the pressure of the Strait of Hormuz is lifted, potentially, if America and Iran work something out. Pressure on Hormuz is lifted. The Gulf monarchies, that's another question about what they're going to do with the US bases and their geopolitical alignment. But then Israel's sort of left out in the cold. They've just sort of been abandoned. At that point, it could go any number of ways. Maybe we can talk about that. Maybe we can't because I tend to ramble. It's already been 25 minutes. You've asked only 2 questions. So I think it's hard to get out, but it's easier for America to get out, for sure.
Yeah. But I still think for Iran to stop, they can't just say, okay, America, you've gone, so we'll stop as well. They're going to have some demands to ensure that they're not going to be back in 2 months. Some of the demands are going to include, it seems like this is kind of what's coming out of Iran. One, that they want an end to the sanctions on Iran. 2, they want, at least they're asking at the moment, their demand is that American bases in the region go away.
Yep.
So thirdly, they want compensation for all the damage that's been done to Iran. None of these things are things that Trump can realistically deliver and still have face saving for himself that he can sell to
Not
people in America.
Not true.
No?
Not true. The third one is very unlikely. The third one, war reparations, as it's diplomatically officially called, unlikely that America's going to pay Iran a penny. Bruv, America doesn't even pay America a penny. There's people in America like, now I'm not even joking. Like the tariffs that America imposed, and Trump imposed specifically on other countries, the U.S. Supreme Court said actually those tariffs are invalid. Yeah, but further investigation showed what should be the next step is those tariffs that were charged should be refunded. And the the federal body that is in charge of collecting those tariffs, their whole mechanism is so convoluted. The assessment by Financial Times, I believe, The Economist, I believe, is you ain't getting your refund, mate. that money's gold. So they're not even paying themselves back, let alone that. So let's third one out. Okay, the first two let's talk about. Quite realistic, actually. More realistic than you might think. Number one, sanctions lifted on Iran. For those who aren't really into the geopolitics, this is the holy grail for Iran. This is the shining gem on a pedestal somewhere, right? Where if you look at it, it goes, oh, it's like sanctions are the thing that single-handedly debilitates the Iranian state more than any other single component of their entire nation, infrastructure, economic model, everything. Sanctions is number one most damaging. If you look into sanctions, I talk about sanctions in a lot of my videos. How they work is truly spectacularly oppressive to the sanctioned nation. Now, I'm an unbiased analyst, Tafim, so I'm not saying sanctions are warranted or unwarranted. I'm just telling you they are crippling. Yeah. Right? You can be happy or sad about that. That's up to you guys. Sanctions are crippling. Any company working with that country, any company with a branch in that country, any transactions to that country or from that country, out. You're going to get punished by America. It's like America's on the playground. Not only is he a bully that beats up Iran occasionally or threatens to, he says, everyone, hear ye. I don't know what kind of playground this is where he's talking like this. But hear ye, anyone who's mates with this kid is going to get beats after school. So no kid wants to talk to Iran. In that environment, they've still managed to somehow hold their ground because they've got 50 years of experience now trying to dodge sanctions, and they got very creative, very innovative. The Iranians are a very well-educated, by the way, very intelligent population in terms of the focus that education has been given to them by the state. Fun fact, the Iranian Islamic Revolution, 1979, before the level of education was much lower than the level of education now. And also, fun fact, women are more educated in Iran than men. So hashtag feminism for the liberals out there who are trying to overthrow the regime. Well, the regime is actually quite feminist, you could say, in that regard. But anyway, I digress, as I always do, Tafim. Sorry. You will regret by the end of this inviting me on to this podcast. It's going to become a 10-hour Lex Friedman bonanza. But anyway, sanctions being lifted would be the holy grail for Iran. If they can achieve that in any capacity, it would be huge. And by the assessment of many, sanctions lifting is unreliable. America might decide next week, or Trump wakes up on the wrong side of the bed looking a bit more orange than usual and he's upset. I don't know what. Something happens and they say, you know what? I changed my mind. Because Barack Obama negotiated the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. They signed, Iran signed, and Trump came in, looked at the agreement, said, nah, this doesn't look as cool as the deal I make. I make great deals out of the deal. Have you read my book? And he cancelled it. Iran's like, we're abiding by the rules. Well, you can't do that. They cancelled it and then reimposed sanctions unilaterally because, international law, more like international L when it comes to America. You can just do what you want. Great power politics. So Iran, even if they got sanctions lifted, they would understand that it's unreliable. We might have sanctions reimposed on us, but there's many things that they can do in that window of time where it's lifted. And I talk about that in one of my videos. I say they could front load some oil deals where nations pay them first for an agreement where they keep shipping oil. If the sanctions are reimposed, they've already got the money and they can use a shadow fleet to keep sending out oil. There's other things they can do, like gain infrastructure investment. If you build something in your country when sanctions are lifted, sanctions reimposed, the thing is still there. Like physically, you built it. The company's built it already. The company might leave, but you still got the infrastructure. So there's many things that Iran can do. That would be one of the big wins. Now, to answer really the elephant in the room, probably, would Trump be able to lift sanctions? Like, how would he square that away with America winning? Apparently, they did an amazing job. Apparently, they won this war. We're the best. All that propaganda basically. This is how you square it off. Or square it away with the American people. You say, "I've just spoken to Iran. They've made a deal with me, of course, because it's me, and it's a great deal. Let me tell you, we lift the sanctions on Iran, which doesn't really benefit the American people, and we're America first, so we lift the sanctions, and they've agreed to allow us to invest in their oil infrastructure. Chevron, get over here. ConocoPhillips, get over here. And he sends in the oil companies that they sent into Venezuela. Now, that's a bitter pill for Iran to swallow, but if it leads to lifting the sanctions, that might be something that America and Iran can square away. Remember, these two nations were in diplomatic talks. Before this kicked off, the latest update was Iran was saying, we're willing to stop enriching uranium for a time. We're willing to, this is the craziest one, we're willing to dilute the uranium we've already enriched. And America was like, great. And Israel was like, Daddy's about to make a deal. Let me just strike first. And Marco Rubio admitted that. That's what happened. Marco Rubio said that Israel was about to strike first. We knew that if they strike, Iran's going to hit us back. So we preemptively attacked Iran. My guy doesn't know what preemptively means, because that's not preemptively. You can't say, I slapped you first because I know my mate's going to slap you and you're going to slap him in response. So I'm going to... That's not preemptive, my G. Anyway, I'm digressing again, but do you get my point?
Yeah. Good.
There is a mechanism where America can lift sanctions without looking like the loser. They can say, we lifted sanctions, we got rid of Iran's nuclear weapons because Iran can go back to the nuclear enrichment negotiations they were having with America. They can say, we will dilute our uranium, stop enriching uranium, you lift the sanctions, yes, your oil companies can come and talk to us. That looks like a win from America. But it's also a win for Iran. The Iranian state can say to their people, look at how prestigious, how much honor your state has afforded you. You stood up against the great power on earth. You looked him dead in the eyes. You spat in his face, and he said, thank you, please come again. Right? And he's willing to invest in our country now. Sanctions that have been on our country for 50 years have been lifted. This is very dangerous, by the way, because then America looks like it's won, and Iran looks like it's won. And the spoiled little child in the middle, Israel, is a loser all around. I don't even know what your second thing was. I forgot what your second...
The military bases.
The military bases, bro, that's a whole podcast by itself. GG, if we get into the military bases. The dynamics of the military bases is quite complicated because the Middle Eastern powers are essentially very self-governing vassals of the US. I'm not calling them vassals, but analytically speaking, their foreign policy is tied to America's foreign policy. Has been for decades. Now they're gaining a bit of independence. You see Saudi Arabia flexing a bit of muscle. He's moving around a bit more. He's like, America goes that way, Saudi doesn't follow in behind. They actually go another way. Sort of almost like King Faisal vibes, but not that much yet. And that's because if you look into it, Saudi is selling its oil to who now? China mainly. Saudi is getting its military equipment from who now? Well, still America, but mainly America. But the newer investment Saudi is looking to make, they're looking at Khan fighter jets from Turkey. They're looking at a defense pact with Pakistan for that nuclear umbrella for a rainy day. They're speaking to, by speaking to Pakistan, by the way, they get indirect access to China's technology without actually speaking to China. So America can't be as upset as it would be if Saudi was going straight to China. So you see, the countries are getting a little bit of autonomy there. So they might use this situation to, accelerate America's exit. They might say, look, we were not involved. America attacked. We suffered. So you know what? The leases on your US bases in our country, I'm not renewing them. That's what the Gulf countries could do. And the real Gulf country to look at is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is like a planet. Every other Gulf Cooperation Council country is like a moon that sort of orbits it. I've got a planet right there, I think. Anyway, if Saudi makes a move, expect the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain to follow in behind.
Very true. But on the other hand, I see, so recently the Spanish Prime Minister asked America that they can't use our bases in Spain for the attacks on Iran. And America said, we'll do it anyway, try and stop us. And it's pretty much the same. Iraq has asked America to leave its bases a number of times. Back in the days of Al-Qaeda, when there was pressure on Saudi Arabia, Saudi minister said that, do you think it's as simple as us telling America to leave and they will leave?
It's not.
It's not that simple. So unless America decides itself that it's time to go, and if that time comes, how is that? Because after this war, whatever happens, I think the geopolitics of the region are going to be changed completely. Because if Iran comes out of this relatively unscathed, it's going to be such a huge power in the area, and all the other Gulf nations have been proven to be incompetent in providing their own security, even with American bases there. So I think things are going to have to realign a lot, which was already happening. If we see there was already a rift coming up between Saudi Arabia and UAE, for example, as UAE was getting a bit too close to Israel and was trying to have its own independent foreign policy, geopolitics, independent of Saudi Arabia. So how do you see the region changing? Do you think it's going to be completely dominated by Iran? Do you think that's a fear that they might have?
Okay, so I remember when Trump was going to be elected, I was saying, even to my family members, especially to my family members, I said, Trump, first of all, he's great. He's a great, funny guy.
He's great for you. I love your accent.
He makes for superb, thank you. He makes for superb TV. You're fired, bruv. You can't fire. They're not hired even yet. Anyway, that's Apprentice. That's a criticism of the Apprentice show. But Trump is the great accelerator, Tafim. What the trajectory America was already on,
yes,
I assessed, Trump is just going to accelerate that. And that's exactly what he has done. He's not taken the American ship in a different direction. He's just said, full steam ahead. Why are we going half speed? I don't go half speed. Like, America was sliding out of the office of superpower into the office of great power, one of two slots. America has just sped up because of Trump. Their relationships are collapsing. Their prestige is at an all-time low. Geostrategically, because they're moving out of Europe and the Middle East faster, they've got less influence in those areas. Economically, Trump's isolationist policies, the tariffs, for example, mean that America's economy is not going to grow anywhere near as fast and be anywhere near as interconnected with its friends and allies and robust, which means that is not going to be able to keep up with its challenger, China, Zhongguo, the Middle Kingdom, which is doing the exact opposite of America in almost everything. America says we're going to contract. China says we are going to expand. America says we are going to bring manufacturing here. China says we are too advanced. You guys take some of the lower manufacturing, right? America says we're going to act in alignment with our capabilities. International order, rules-based world order. This is all, it looks like a bad deal for me. China says, no, we have to uphold the international world order. Every nation should have an equal say. Every nation should have a seat at the table. They're acting a lot more stately because the spirit animal of the United States is a bald eagle, which I think is very representative. It's an old man, basically, right? He's like grandpa. He was great in the day. He was the breadwinner. He was the homeowner. He did good for his family. But man's going senile now. He's suffering from dementia. May Allah, save our community from it. He's suffering from all kinds, and he's like screaming and shouting random outbursts. You have to take care of grandpa. But grandpa's not going to lead the household in the big decisions anymore, is it? China's like the young man who's grown up. He's responsible now. He's got a good job. He's got a good car. He's the one that the family is the international community. He's the one that the family now looks to as the capable, responsible one. Right? So in this situation, I have to, Tafim, come back to you and say, what was the initial question? Because I've completely lost it.
How are the Gulf nations going to cope with the new reality? Are they going to be faced by like a completely dominant Iran? Do they have to subdue to Iran?
So if America leaves the region, as I have been saying they are, it's going to change the dynamics in that any country reliant upon America instantly becomes weaker, obviously. Also becomes more free in their own foreign policy. That's a key beneficial point. They don't have to do exactly and align exactly as America would align. Now, this, I think, is a fear that Iran will dominate the region. That's part of the Western spin, my friend. Because Iran is really capable, is really prepared, and has been preparing and is now executing a plan that is absolutely survivalist, defensive in nature. To think of Iran as potentially dominating the Middle East is to impose the Western culture on Iran. Iran's not a Western country. The only Western country in the region is the Western outpost nation by analytical, definitions, really, because it's culturally very close to Europe and North America, the state of Israel. And you see the behavior of them acting as the sort of descendants of colonizers would act. This very sort of, I deserve that part, I deserve that part, I was promised that mountain over there. Like, that's just the characteristic as a nation state. China, Iran, they don't have that characteristic. Russia kind of has that characteristic. The Rossiyskaya Imperia was the Russian Empire back in the Victorian era. They had larger borders, and then it was the Soviet Union. China's like anything happens in the world, I'm all about the Middle Kingdom, my country. Persia, very similar. Ancient culture, they're all about Persia, and specifically Iran now. So Iran's, and more practically than just talking about the culture, Iran's capabilities don't translate from defensive to offensive very effectively. Like,
True.
To be offensive is very expensive, very hard, and very diplomatically damaging. Iran doesn't want diplomatic damage. It wants to be a key player in the global south, in the BRICS, China-led new world order. It wants its place there. It's just trying to survive the years that America's still sort of pressuring Iran. It's almost out of it, and it's almost about to die, but it seems to so far have managed to stay just about alive. If it can make it out of that storm and America goes away, Iran just takes its comfortable place as a non-sanctioned, thriving nation in the Middle East with a very low likelihood, historically speaking. It's very unlikely that these guys are going to push out, completely reconfigure their economy to be militarized, and then switch from defensive survival, armadillo, go underground mode to suddenly, I need to be across the I need to be across the Persian Gulf, and I need to be in the UAE, and I need to be in Saudi Arabia. Yeah. That's a fear imposed by the West, and also it's a fear of the Gulf monarchies, because they've spent decades, Tafim, under America's sphere of influence. So a lot of what they've heard, a lot of what they've learned is influenced by the American culture that has said that Iran is the enemy, Iran is the foreigner, Iran is the crazy nutter state, even though your protectorate state is the only nation that's ever used nuclear weapons on people. Your protectorate state has carried out there's a list, a long list, of regime change operations across the world, and is currently operating in a sort of a rogue state manner. So my assessment is, if America leaves, the Gulf states should not worry, because analytically speaking, Iran's geostrategic objective is not to dominate the region by expanding. It's to secure their own survival and their own prosperity under the current administration that they have. So anyone looking for example, suddenly Iran to become a democracy, I will have bad news for you. By my assessment, that's not happening anytime soon. But also, the Gulf nations, I don't think are in any danger if America leaves. They can't flip, though.
Very good point.
Sorry, go on.
I think that's a very good point. I also think if Iran's sanctions are removed, Iran has a very bright future ahead of it, because if you think about it, with so much sanctions, so much propaganda, the 8-year war that was imposed from Iraq onto Iran, despite all of that, Iran has kind of survived and thrived. Without all of that baggage, Iran could be a very big power in the future, economically and technologically, I think. So they have a bright future ahead of them. So let's see what happens. But another question, another problem. So if America does withdraw from the region pretty much entirely, what impact is that going to have on petrodollar? Because if petrodollar crashes, that could bankrupt America. So they have to kind of balance that somehow as well.
The petrodollar question. We've, I think, come out of the situation where America can enforce militarily its the supremacy of its currency. We're coming out of it. We're coming out of that age, I think. On the other side, China, this is going to be a very hot take. I don't think anyone's going to have mentioned this on any podcast. Maybe some academics are talking about it in books, but I'm not an academic and this is not a book. China is going to try very hard to make sure America doesn't collapse. Because China benefits, the global south benefits from a stable world. The current most militarily powerful and likely the second most economically connected country on earth is America, straight after China. For that country to collapse is like, an asteroid hitting the planet. Everyone's going to suffer. And China doesn't want that. Brazil doesn't want that. Russia doesn't want that. They want America to take their place as the second, one of two great powers. They don't want what is called the Thucydides trap, which is the leading nation gets stressed when they see a challenger on its way up. So they bring out all their aggressive power and smack the challenger. And that, congratulations, I've just described to you World War III. So China just doesn't want World War III.
Yeah.
But the collapse of the petrodollar and the collapse of the US economy as a result, I think nations, including the global South nations and America's friends and allies, in the Western economic bloc, they'll all try not to prevent America's economic collapse, because then the whole world collapses technically. China, China sells most of its stuff to America. Or not most of its stuff, but a lot of its stuff to America, right? So American currency domination is going to come to an end, by my assessment. It's very likely. It's just they're now running on the fumes of being the world hegemon for so many years, but they're still running on fumes. You've run out of petrol, right?
Yeah.
Strait of Hormuz, pun not intended. And China is building, China recently announced that they want the Chinese yuan, the renminbi. Yuan renminbi is like pound sterling, by the way. Yeah, so for those who are confused why two words are sort of floating around. China wants the yuan to be a world reserve currency. And they're very likely to be economically in a position to push that reality. China is working on currency swaps with many other countries. China is working on resetting trade so that it's traded in yuan rather than dollars. So the dollar in usage is diminishing. But it can be a graceful descent rather than like a rock hitting one of the turbines of a plane and sending it into a nosedive. It doesn't have to be that way.
So true. Also, if we look at the way America has been dealing with the rise of China, as you say at the start of this talk, that America's peer competitor is China, and everything that geopolitically America should be doing is geared towards balancing off or dealing with China as a competitor. But everything America seems to be doing in relative terms makes America weaker and makes China stronger. So from Obama's time, when they talked about pivot to Asia, but even before that, from Clinton's time, they're trying to kind of gear up against China, but they're so preoccupied. They want to fight every single war in the world. So by the time they actually get to China, they'll be knackered.
I like your take on this. It's interesting framing. It's very refreshing. I've not heard it framed like that before.
So how do you explain this? Is this nothing to do, all of these wars, they're nothing really to do with the American state, and it's more to do with the elite in the American military industrial base, which is getting richer and richer by every war. How do you explain all of this that's going on? If their main focus is China, why aren't they focusing on China?
I have an assessment. I called it. I said I called this on one of my earlier videos, maybe just 2 months ago. I said China has gone past the point where America can contain them. America, I think, at a state level has recognized there is no stopping China. There is no economically curtailing their advances, no militarily containing them with the first island chain. It's over. It's over. So now, rather than America work as hard as possible to stay they're running, right? America's running, China's running, but China's catching up, right? China's Usain Bolt, and somehow someone else is in first place at the moment, right? America's like, okay, this guy's coming so fast, I can't stop him. Normally, by your assessment, to compete with China, you just start running faster so that you can stay ahead, right?
Yeah.
But America's like, now, Banda, what I'm going to do is run off to the side and go for runners number 5, 6, 7, 8, dominate them. Okay. I'm just going to stop the race and convince number 4, 5, 6, and 7 that you're actually my backyard and I have full sovereign control over you. Like, I have, what I'm trying to say, the analogy is broken down now. So I'm just going to bring it back to reality. What I'm trying to say is America's realized they cannot expand across the globe with their military and economic influence and contain China on the other side of the globe. So now what they've done is they've contracted and solidified, or they're trying to now solidify their control of their backyard. They're like, as China expands, I can't deal with it. So let me just put salt around my house so that they can't expand beyond that ring of salt. I don't know why salt would stop China, but anyway, it is in this. Anyway, the Western Hemisphere is that backyard. You will see America double down, work really hard. Fun fact, Greenland is in the Western Hemisphere, by the way, even though technically it's part of Europe's control. America is going to work really hard to take as much control of as much control of Western Hemisphere as they can. And I do think at some point an administration is going to come in, and geopolitically, the nation state of America does need to compete. So in science, in technology, I'm guessing you already in many domains are seeing a second Cold War, where in all domains, America's pushing up its production and its research and development and capabilities to stay ahead of China. Yeah. Not in all domains. Some domains they've abandoned.
Yeah.
Like solar power, they looked at China, they were like, yeah, nah, that's gone. Wind power, they're like, you may have a closer look. Yeah, nah, that's gone as well, probably. And so they're working on some other things, right? They're looking at space, right? They're looking at
AI,
artificial intelligence. Digital services is still a very leading facet. There is still a very leading industry for America. They're looking at computer chips, very related to AI, but it's a different domain, to be honest. They hold the lead. Their allies, friends and allies, hold the lead. They're taking TSMC, Taiwan's semiconductor manufacturing corporation. They're bringing them into Arizona, and they're onshoring or nearshoring factories out of East Asia onto America. And to be honest, Taiwan's offloading their technology into other parts of East Asia, like South Korea, I believe, because they know that China might one day be like, you know what, unification sounds good to me this year, like, and they need to be somewhere else. So it's all very interesting. America. So in summary, I'm saying America's kind of accepted that there is no maintaining world hegemon status for the US. It's now just a case of damage control, and can we get how comfortable of a seat can we get in this new world order?
Also, it's interesting as well, Russia's kind of role in everything, because personally I see Russia as a great power as well, not economically, but definitely militarily. And
no, sorry, please finish.
And I was going to say, it's interesting as well to see how now that Trump was looking to bring an end to this war in Iran, he gives a 1 hour call to Putin. And in some ways, America is still dreaming of a possibility of peeling Russia away from the domain of China and bringing it back somehow into, not back, but bringing it into like the Western kind of domain, which I don't think is going to be successful.
Western sphere of influence.
Yes, but also I think you're absolutely right about the fact that Trump is a great accelerator, because I think just decline of American influence and the rise of the BRICS was happening anyway. But in these recent years, especially since the war in Ukraine, it's accelerated so much, and maybe even more so when with just this last 12 days. How do you see Russia's role in everything?
So yeah, just on Trump being an accelerator, yeah, it's like if America's the Titanic, Trump being elected in, he's like showed up with a torpedo boat, and he's aimed at it. He's like, "We're sinking. Let me sink you faster because we want to, get the job done quick." Russia's role, first of all, I consider Russia and India to be what I call great regional powers. So they are a great power so far as their region. They dominate their region pretty much undisputably. So, for example, Russia in Europe, all of Europe's might combined backing up Ukraine, and they've just about managed to hold back the Russian bear, just like the front lines, just like there. And that's everyone trying really hard, including American contribution from across the Atlantic, right? So, and in India's case, like Pakistan has a standoff with India, but they can't fight India, like invade and beat India. And the only reason India can't do the reverse is because Pakistan is nuclear armed. So, it's an interesting concept that I'll mention just before going back to Russia. Loads of people don't really think of this, but a nation that's nuclear armed, by my assessment, and many others, but this is not a fact, it's just an assessment. Being nuclear armed as a nation gives you one special ability, right? If you're playing a game of cards and you have a special ability card, the special ability is your administration is invulnerable from the outside now. Meaning, if a nation attacks you, invades, they're rolling up to the gates of your capital, you say, my government, if it ends, I'm pressing this button over here. You know what it does? You don't want to know what it does. And everyone's like, we don't want to know what it does. And so no one will overthrow an administration by capturing their capital and removing the current government from power and imposing something else. You can't. Doesn't matter how small and weak the country is. You can't do that because that administration, before they die, because you're killing the administration basically, not the nation, not the citizens, not the people, but the government in place, you're killing it. So it will say, as I die, I'm going to press this button and you're going to die. Like, no one wants to take that risk. So it gives you invulnerability from administration collapse from the outside. It doesn't give you invulnerability, fun fact, from administration collapse from the inside. Because you could have a civil war and a new government could come into power and they would now hold the nuclear launch codes. So that's a thing. So Russia is affected by the current situation in that they might be able to play. And Putin is a very smooth operator. He's very politically capable, of course. And he's supported by great people like Sergei Lavrov. When I say great, I'm not supporting them. I'm saying they're great at their job. So if you're evil, and I say you're great at being evil, it's like you're just doing a good job at whatever you want to do. That's what I'm saying. So Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, Savage Sergei, as I call him sometimes, and Putin and his administration, they are quite a capable administration. And I would say, in terms of managing Russia's geopolitics, what I'll say is they might be able to play America and China off each other. China knows this, America knows this, but it doesn't stop them from being able to play them off each other. So Russia can say, American companies, you can come and help us extract our oil. And American companies will actually be happy with that, and America will be happy with that. But then China's going to be like, we kind of boys. And Russia's like, well, yeah, we're kind of boys, but he's got a great deal. So China might be more inclined to cooperate with Russia, give them technology transfer and incentives in another way to keep them on China's side. More economically, this is Russia's obviously part of BRICS. So I would be very surprised if they sort of somehow left BRICS and aligned with America. That's not happening anytime soon. But Russia does stand to benefit in the shift to a multipolar world because they can they can get some good deals out of a transactional America that's trying to peel them away. They can say, yeah, you're winning me over. Like, oh, no, you're winning me over. And Russia are getting some good deals as they pretend to be won over. But they're not actually being won over in the sense that they're going to ally with America against China anytime soon. So, and I didn't call them a great power because China and America operate at an order of magnitude higher than Russia. When Russia was the Soviet Union, yes, Russia was a great power. America was a great power. China was not even in the picture. This is before Deng Xiaoping and the great leap forward within Chinese economic and cultural history. Industrialization, mass industrialization, lifting millions out of poverty, 800 million, I think. Back then, Russia was the Soviet Union. If you look at a map of the Soviet Union, half of Eastern Europe is in the Soviet Union, which is now like a whole mosaic patchwork of all kinds of other countries. They competed with America back then during the Cold War, and even then they were struggling because the economic model of communism, socialism, was not working for them. The economic model of socialism now, which in China is socialism with Chinese characteristics, they call it, which is basically, Tafim, socialism with capitalism. That's because China's not socialist pure. They're socialist in the sense that they're socialist with the state allowing private businesses to be fully capitalist. It's just that at the top of everyone, top level authority in China rests with the Politburo and Xi Jinping, who sits elected by the Politburo, the Chinese paternalistic, fatherly governance, right? It watches over the whole Chinese state. If a billionaire, you can become a billionaire, right? So it's capitalism. But if a billionaire starts doing things that the Chinese government say that's against the good of the people, billionaire is not staying billionaire for long. He might get lost somehow suddenly one day and his billions are diluted. In America, situation is very different. At the top sits the richest boy on the block. He just pays to win democracy, bro. He's paid to win democracy. You buy whoever you need to buy, including Trump. I mean, including the president, whoever it might be, right? That's what lobby groups and campaign donations allow. The richest people can do whatever they want basically with their money and engineer the state to benefit them in that way.
Yes. Mahfuz, thank you so much. I really enjoyed your analysis. Now let's talk about your own background. How did you get into geopolitics, and how has your experience been in terms of content creation? So let's talk about your geopolitics first.
How did I get into geopolitics? You know, Tafim,
I think you studied computers, no?
What?
Did you study computer science or something? I think. If I'm mistaken.
No. Nah.
What do you do?
So I've been a bit all over the place. So when I was young, I was really mathsy and into biology. So I wanted to become a doctor. And I think that's because my parents wanted me to become a doctor. So you just do what your parents. After a while, I realized maybe it's not the best for me, but it's not something to completely throw in the trash. So I studied biomedical science at degree.
See, I have listened to your videos. Biomedicine, I remember that.
That's it. By the end of biomedical science, by the end of the degree, I was like, I don't really feel like wearing a lab coat and goggles on top of my goggles already. Like goggleception. It's very uncomfortable, by the way, wearing glasses and then goggles. So do I want to do this for the rest of my life? And the answer, Tafim, was no. So my brain thought, okay, find something that can make you some good fulus, some money, but it's not you standing in a lab coat in lab, microscoping, I don't know, tissue samples or something, right? Urine samples or whatever. And there's no disrespect to biomedical scientists, very great people, cancer researchers, hematologists, immunologists, etc. But it wasn't for me. So I found a job in IT. A friend of mine got me a job at his company. I was at service desk. I was the, technical support. Hi there, sir. Yes. Have you tried turning it off and on again? I was that guy.
Life.
Yeah, exactly. After a few years of that, I taught myself cybersecurity concepts and technology and information to the point where I could get a cybersecurity job. And I started applying for cybersecurity jobs. My manager at the time said, you need to calm down. You're getting a bit too, he literally said, you need to slow down your ambition. I was like, this is not the right work environment for me. So I handed in my resignation respectfully. I spent 7 months, jobless. And everyone around me was like, why would you give up a full-time job to just do nothing at home? I'm like, I'm not doing nothing at home. I'm studying to become a cybersecurity specialist. And then I was given a chance. I got some offers come out. The first offer I got that I was most happy with, I took up that. It was a job as a cybersecurity. It was a penetration testing and vulnerability management analyst position at a FTSE 250 company in the City of London. I took that job. I was very happy with it. Spent 4 years there. At the end of the 4 years, something's happened. And I left that job 24th December last year to focus. At the time, I wasn't 100% sure, but now I've decided rather than look for a new cybersecurity job, I'm going to do social media because I do genuinely believe in what I do. So to answer your question about the geopolitics, because that was my life story. You didn't ask for it, but there you go. You're welcome. I got into geopolitics because when I was about 15, 14, people are playing football, which I probably should have because, it would have actually helped me with my physique and health, but I wasn't. Oh, well, I was listening to the news, bro. I was reading and watching the news a lot. And I would know about all kinds happening in all parts of the world. And people, my mates don't know what the heck is going on. They're like, where the flip is XYZ? Like Syria. I can't point to Syria on a map. Whereas I would be like doodling the map of the world. I can just doodle the map of the world now, right? Just because it's interesting to me. So after about 10 years, I had already built a foundation understanding geopolitics. And this is where we get into social media. During the Gaza crisis, I remember distinctly sitting in a car dealer showroom because my little brother was buying a car. Mashallah, he's doing quite well. And he bought a car with his savings. It was his sort of desire to spend it on that. And I remember thinking, what the heck can I do? Ya Allah, getting religious here. Allah, what can I do for Gaza? So that on Qiyamah, on the Day of Judgment, I can present this book and I can say, I don't have much, but I tried this. This is what Allah knows, obviously, everything anyway. But like metaphorically, I'll present Allah with this book and say, these are my efforts. Yeah. This is what I tried to do for the people during the time when everyone's heart's bleeding and the tears have been shed to the point where there's no tears left. This is what I tried to do. I had some level of understanding, I felt, of the news and how the world works that I think set me slightly above the average citizen. Not an expert, but slightly above average. I would understand why Saudi Arabia doesn't do more. I would understand why Egypt has a partnership agreement with Israel. I would understand the geopolitical dynamics, and I knew people wanted the answer, but I knew that people didn't want to read a book because reading a book is out of fashion, has been for the last 30 years. So I thought I'll start doing some stuff. So I got my phone out, sitting in the car dealership, randomly just took a photo of my face and started a TikTok account because I heard TikTok was the bomb. At the time, it was on fire, like in terms of popularity. And also I knew that YouTube requires so much production value. So TikTok was the natural first place where I could just start recording randomly. And you can see my first videos are still up. I didn't delete anything, as far as I know. And where I'll just talk to the camera and post it. And I said, if 1,000 people watch this, I'll be gassed. Because I didn't expect like more than 1,000 people to watch that kind of stuff, because I'm just sitting there speaking long form on TikTok for 4 or 5 minutes. And I'm just some guy sitting there speaking about politics on TikTok. I was thinking TikTok is like, all the dance numbers and the synchronized, and the girls dancing together in sync, and all the astaghfirullah you need to swipe up. Like all that is what TikTok is in my head. But I thought I'll inject myself into that. I'll add my stuff. I'm not there to view weird content like that. And bro, it took off.
Yes.
Like people were like, "Whoa, who is this guy?" But he's okay. He's all right. He's spitting facts. Like, and now obviously, bro, it's on like 450,000 followers. I don't even know where these people come from. Mashallah, loads of people are supportive. Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. I think we've very similar in some ways. My background is all over the place as well. And also Gaza, what happened in Gaza is what inspired me into getting started doing something as well. Where we separate is like you're obviously a lot more successful than I am. But also
success is subjective, bro. Yes, true.
But also I think it's really encouraging to see there's so many, until you get into this niche, you don't realize that there's so many really amazing and very big channels of geopolitics. And that just goes to show that there's a lot of people out there who are interested in what's going on in the world. And not just in Asia. I mean, Asian people, I think, tend to be in Asia. Like I know in Pakistan, people tend to talk a lot about what's happening in Pakistan in politics, but also internationally. Whereas in the West, sometimes you see people aren't really that interested in things. They just form opinions without actually wanting to get into the nitty-gritty. But when you look at these channels, you see that there is a huge, big audience out there, and I think that's encouraging to see that people do want to get educated.
Yeah, it's very encouraging.
Yeah,
I think being in the West, I was born and raised in the West, but I am ethnically from Bangladesh.
Yeah.
Or I'm Bengali, more accurately. So we've got roots in the East, and also
I was telling my daughter, Mahfuz is the funniest Bengali I know.
It's a huge compliment, man. Huge compliment. So being Muslim, being Bengali, but being born and raised in the United Kingdom, I think positioned me in a very good way to be able to zoom out and sort of assess the situation without being sort of diehard, blindly following one side. At least I can remove my analysis from that. I still have opinions as an individual, of course. As a human being, I'm not unbiased, but I claim my reporting is unbiased, right? And I think I'm well positioned to do that. To add to your point, in the West, a lot of people just don't seem to care or have an interest in the rest of the world. I don't blame the people at all. It's part of the culture here to see this continent, which is really just like the extension of Asia. It's not really a continent. Anyway, it's West Asia, really. But let's call it Europe. Europe sees itself as the center of the world, has done, especially since the age of empires and when they were technologically quite advanced and developed naval seafaring capabilities and went everywhere else and colonized, right? If there's a war in Europe, it's called instantly a world war, right? But what about Latin America? No one cares. If there's a war in Latin America, it's not a world war, it's a South American war, right?
Yeah.
Africa is probably the most underrated continent, of course. So yeah, my main goal to stand separate from all the geopolitical channels and the heavyweights that are present. Yes, they do exist on YouTube, for example, especially. My main unique selling point is two things. First, I crack silly jokes that some people find funny. Thank you. Second is I'm providing the news and the analysis I claim without the Western spin, but specifically without any spin. I say without the Western spin. I need to focus on the Western spin because in the Western-speaking world where I am, the Western spin is the main spin. In China, the Chinese spin is the main spin. Right? In Pakistan, the Pakistan Zindabad, bruv, is the main spin. Right?
Yeah.
Here, the Western spin is the predominant spin that I want to counter because I want people to get... My mission is not to convince people that I'm right. My mission is to offer them on a plate the facts and then give my assessment. And you can agree or disagree with my assessment, but I want you to get the facts. I don't want you to see a headline from BBC or Sky News or some other outlet in the West where it says if the Western countries do something, it's many die from missile strike in Iran.
Yes.
Who struck? No one knows. Many die? Okay, doesn't really matter. Whereas if it's the reverse, it's Islamic Iranian regime targets. Mother of 5, Tracy Beaker. I don't like.
Yes.
Like, why is that so specific? Why is the attacker outlined? Why is it humanizing? And the other one is the exact opposite in every single way. Is because the Western spin is every other is less important. You could say even less human, right? It is just a figure. It's a vague, hazy number, group of people that just died because that's what the people do over there. They just die. Whereas us, we're, one person dies, it's a tragedy. It's a flipping candlelight vigil for the next 5 days. Like everyone's holding arms, arm in arm because, a building got bombed that makes newspapers. But when a mosque gets bombed and 50 people die and you did it, yeah, no, that's calm, my G. That's fine. Can we strike another one? Like that's the sort of sentiment. And I wanted to overcome that because I believe the citizens everywhere on earth, Tafim, most people just want to live their best life. Yes. They just want to take care of their spouse. They just want to earn an honest living. They just want to raise their kids in a safe environment. And I want to bring to the Western audience that are my people. I was born and raised in the UK. I want to bring to them the perception, the understanding that China and Russia and African countries and Middle Eastern countries, they are not necessarily your enemies. Yeah. They are there like you are here. They're just people living their lives. And some media outlets are lying to you. And potentially some governments in some parts of the Western world, they are manipulating you. And I don't take you for a mug. I give you the facts and I say, you decide. Whereas others will spin it, hit you. You're going to start spinning like Welling Derbyshire. And before you know it, you've drunk so much Kool-Aid, you don't know what the heck is going on. And you think that your fringe propaganda opinion is actually objective fact.
Yes.
That's what you're going to end up thinking. And I'm here to say, actually, that's not the case. Come to Baba. I will detox you.
So true. Mahfuz, I'll put links to your shows and everything in the show notes. But how, for people listening, what's the best way to find you on YouTube and TikTok? I'll put link to your show in the show notes for this talk. But for people listening who aren't able to go and do the clicks to find you, what's the best way to find you on YouTube and TikTok?
So if you want to hear a lot more of my talking, and there is an unlimited supply at this point, as this podcast attests to. I'm surprised you're still here, Tafim, and awake. You've got strong endurance. Much respect, mashallah. May Allah preserve you. YouTube, TikTok are my main platforms. If you type in News Baba, i.e., news and then BABA, I'll come up, probably. I'm popular enough now. Alhamdulillah. It just comes up. It'll probably be my face, just like a zoom up of my face. That same picture I took in the car dealership like 2 years ago. It's still that one.
Wow. Amazing. I really highly recommend everyone go check it out. I've subscribed and I'm sure you're going to all enjoy it. Mahfuz, thank you so much for your time today. Let's get together again soon. There's so many things, spin-offs from your talk that I'm thinking, I'd like to talk more about this and that.
Inshallah.
So inshallah, we'll do this again soon.
Inshallah, Tafim. Thanks for having me.